planned a picnic at a park that was showing an outdoor movie. Wine, snacks, blanket. It was nice. We snuggled a bit and kissed once. Then, when we packed up to leave, I held her hand. I was told that was a little too aggressive and forward of me. Then I was ghosted. Super odd. Story 1. Quick and easy reply. 18-year-old me, 21 years ago, goes on a date to the pub with my crush from school in the United Kingdom. An hour into the date, she asks to borrow £20, which I did give her. 15 minutes later, she's leaving with another guy. Story 2. This one girl kept giving me strikes. I'd say or do something and she'd go, strike 1, strike 2, like that. So I said, well, hang on. How many strikes do I get? She goes, 3, like in baseball. I go, how many do I have now? You're up to 2, so be careful. Oh, okay. And I got up and walked away. Story 3. I definitely went ice skating with my crush, and I fell and broke both my tibia and my fibula and had to have emergency surgery. Worst date to have with a crush you have liked for about 3 years. Story 4. Showed up to a date. First question she asks, oh, how did you get here? Me, I rode my bike. Her, ugh, I hate cyclists. Whenever I see them, I want to run them over in my car. 2 minutes later, her, so where are you from? Me, I grew up in Canada. Her, I've been to Montreal. Me, oh cool, me too. I really like it. What did you think? Her, I hated it. I thought it was dirty and the French people are really rude. 2 minutes later, talking about work. Me, I was in consulting. Her, ugh, me too. I hated it. I didn't like a single consultant I met. We left after 30 minutes and never talked to each other again. Story 5. It was at a coffee shop in a library. She showed up, and the very first thing she did was remove her shoes and put them on the table. Later, she mentioned how she was obsessed with victims of serial killers and had them tattooed on her body. Story 6. Halfway through dinner at Denny's, her choice, not mine. On my birthday, she told me she liked the gay guy on the water polo team and left me with the bill. Edit. No, I didn't get a free Grand Slam, but the waitress saw what happened, and she comped my meal when I left. Story 7. I think mine was a simple one. I wasn't exactly in the right place in life at that time, but I had this crush on a girl. The date came, and I believe it was a movie or a dinner. Anyways, she brought along a friend. Even though I was a naive kid at the time, even I could recognize that it was no longer a serious date, but a go-away date. Yeah, if memory serves me, there were no further dates. Story 8. My date used 2-hour street parking when we went to see the movie Interstellar. We had to leave about 20 minutes before the end of the film to get to her car in time. I still have not seen the end. Story 9. Went on 3 dates, nice dinner, met her mom and all that. During the 3rd date, she got a call in the middle of dinner. Finished the call and said, sorry, that's my boyfriend. This is the only time he gets to call from basic training. Then she couldn't wrap her head around why I thought that was messed up. Her reasoning was that he was in another state so she could do whatever she wants. Story 10. It wasn't a date, but this person apparently thought it was. I volunteer at my local humane society, and there are a ton of volunteers there. I got a new volunteer who normally worked in the cat area helping me out in adoptions. I realized right away that she had a condition, maybe Asperger's or something, but she was a very sweet and nice person, so I was always very friendly and cordial to her. Before I knew it, she was always scheduled with me in adoptions. I could tell she liked me, but then she went and found me on Facebook. I have a very common name and am not easy to find in a big city. Then on my next shift, she told me it was her birthday coming up and her parents were taking her to see Captain Marvel in 3D, and she could bring a friend. So I agreed to it. It was very awkward because when I got there, she signed us in on Facebook and said we were on a date. The rest of the night was awkward. I waited about a week to tell her that, although I'd love to be her friend, I wasn't interested in anything more. I could tell she was hurt. Story 11. First and only date at a restaurant, and within the first 5 minutes, She is telling me just how much she loves cocaine and about all the times she has been so drunk that she peed all over the backseat of cabs, most recently the week before. She is pounding shots as this is happening, and I am struggling to remember if I brought cash so I can quickly pay my bill and disappear. Story 12. In 2009, I was seeing a girl for a couple of weeks and took her across the state to see Keith Urban and Taylor Swift. I paid for the tickets and covered all expenses. When we got to Keith Urban's song, "I Want to Kiss a Girl," she said, "I wish I found you attractive so I could kiss you." We then had to finish the show and drive 2.5 hours back home. Tanya, you were inconsiderate. Story 13. I delivered pizzas to a certain hotel quite regularly, and the cute girl at the front desk, whom I was acquainted with through a friend, asked if I wanted to get a drink. I was happy for the offer as I was a little heavy at the time and was glad for some company. It turned out to be more of a venting session about her ex for 2 hours. I tried to intersperse something here or there or change the subject, but everything had to be about him. After she left, I felt a sigh of relief, and the bartender put a Jager bomb in front of me and poured himself one, giving me a whew. Glad that's over look. It was kind of awkward every time I'd go to the hotel for my job, and she'd ask to get a drink. I had to pretend to be sober. Edit. Just realized this isn't even close to my worst date. Strap in. A couple of years before the story above took place, I had been seeing someone casually. We would normally meet up after each of us got off work, have some drinks and laughs, and go back to my or her apartment. It was a good deal. We really enjoyed each other's company, and the physical chemistry was strong. She left on a 6-week trip overseas, and we talked occasionally during that time. I started to miss having her around and thought maybe I should be taking this more seriously. When she got back, we decided to go on our first proper date in the 4 months or so we'd been seeing each other. We went to the restaurant, and before the waiter even brought us our appetizer, she got strangely hostile. I got a very direct and accusing question. "How many people did you sleep with while I was away? Did you sleep with that register girl at your work?" Came out of left field for me, and the answer was no. I didn't know where me and her were at, but it kind of felt wrong to me. Conversation changed and became pleasant again. Then, completely unprompted, she said, "My friends don't like you." All I could think to say was, "That's too bad. I like them." I'm starting to feel something's pretty wrong at this point. We went to see Guardians of the Galaxy, and she's still being negative. That movie was stupid. I fell asleep during it. Let's go home and have a drink then. We're at the apartment pool, and again it's accusations about the work girl. I'm tired at this point, so let's go inside. The argument somehow turns into kissing and more. Not so bad, right? We have sex, and I last an embarrassingly short amount of time. It had been 6 weeks. Okay? She was furious, and for once on the date, it wasn't unfounded. We go back to the pool with drinks, and she's still grilling me about the work girl. I finally realized she's projecting a guilty conscience, and I ask, "Did you sleep with somebody?" Her, "I don't know how to answer that." Me, "I don't care if you did. You're not my girlfriend. If you were, you wouldn't have done it." Warning. If you can be grossed out fairly easily, now is the time to stop reading. Her attitude improved after the initial shock. We go back in and start having sex again. But something's wrong, very wrong. I can feel something rubbing against part of the head of my penis during strokes until eventually it becomes painful. I stop and look down. Part of my head looks like someone took a light sander to it. Think like a scraped knee. She somehow blames me. I calm her down, reach in her cervix, and press on the object there. She says she can't feel what I'm pressing on, and I tell her it's a foreign body, and she has to see a gynecologist soon. The next morning, I drive her back in complete silence for 20 minutes. The only thing I said was, "Please see a gynecologist." I get a text a few hours later saying it was a week-old tampon, and they removed it. I spent the next 10 days letting my injury heal and putting antibiotic ointment on it. That was the worst date. Story 14. I once met up with an online date and went to Red Lobster. Pretty girl, pretty decent conversation leading up to our meetup, so I was pretty hopeful. After about 5 minutes in, she pulled out her phone, which is, of course, normally fine. However, she remained glued to it for the next 20 minutes. I tried to continue the conversation, but her responses became more and more limited. Eventually, I got a bit fed up and excused myself to the restroom, caught the waitress on my way and paid for my portion of the meal, and left without another word. Took her 20 minutes to text me and ask where I went. I told her I didn't want to interrupt the date with her phone. Story 15. I knew this woman through a mutual friend. We exchanged numbers and texted for a few days. The conversation was going well, so we decided to meet up. That weekend, we got together and the vibe was good. We talked, laughed, and walked around downtown, going from bar to bar. She suggested that we join her friends to continue drinking. Cool. However, as soon as we met her friends, her whole demeanor changed drastically. She didn't introduce me to them, and I got the cold shoulder for the next hour. Even her friends were trying to start conversations and include me. As we were leaving, she started criticizing men, saying that they are only interested in one thing and so on. I was confused because that wasn't how our night had been, and honestly, I wasn't okay with it. I quietly pulled her aside and told her thanks for the night, but I was going to leave. She started yelling in the street, asking why and saying she didn't understand. We were having a good time, etc. I told her honestly how she had acted and that I wasn't comfortable with it, then walked away. She followed me, calling my name and asking me not to go, but I got in my car and left. I received 6 phone calls in a row, followed by a string of texts ranging from calling me a piece of garbage for embarrassing her to saying she was going to let me sleep with her that night and so on. Oh well, I did run into her a year or so later somewhere else, and she tried to exchange information again. I told her that I'm good. She got upset again, laughing out loud. Story 16. Back in 2003, I recently moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I decided I was going to sign up for Match.com and try online dating for the first time. I started messaging a few girls and eventually made a connection and set up a date. We decided to meet at P.F. Chang's. We had discussed that it was going to be casual, so of course, she showed up in an evening gown, first flag. She was super gorgeous and looked great in the gown, but also looked completely out of place. Fight or flight kicked in, but she was attractive, so I decided to stay and fight. She stood next to me at the bar and ordered 2 glasses of wine. She immediately downed one, took a sip of the second, and turned to me and said, "Hi." Second flag, kind of. We had some awkward small talk, and I mentioned her evening gown. She told me she collects them and decided to wear one tonight to dazzle me. Third flag, but I am staying in this. We were seated at a table, and as the server walked up, she ordered a bottle of wine. Fourth flag. Okay, she likes wine and she's attractive, I'm still in it. We had more awkward small talk and eventually ordered food. And by the time I had finished my first beer that I had ordered while back at the bar, she had already finished the bottle of wine and ordered another. Fifth flag. And now I am planning my escape. I stood and asked if she knew where the restrooms were, and as she was pointing in a direction behind me, I turned to look, and I felt a stabbing pain in my right cheek, which literally made me flinch in pain. I grabbed my cheek as I turned to see what had just bit me, and she was giggling. She was holding a 5-inch long pin, which she had used to stab me. Sixth flag, and I am done. I walked to the bathroom and went into one of the stalls, dropped my pants, and did a hand sweep of my right cheek, and my hand came back bloody. I used toilet paper and applied pressure to eventually stop the bleeding. I zipped up, washed my hands, and had a moment where I said to myself in the mirror, "Okay, go back out there. Tell her this evening is over and that you are going home. Don't ever do this online dating stuff again." I walked out and found the server, paid the bill, and closed the check. I told the server to hold off serving anything until I was finished talking with my date and I was walking to the door. She agreed. As I walked up to the table, I noticed people giving me dirty looks and realized that my date was silently sobbing at the table. For some reason, I was the bad guy in this situation. Maybe they didn't see the assault, but maybe they only saw the glare I gave her. I sat down and asked why she was crying. She said that she messed up by drinking so much wine and she thought she was being cute and funny poking me with the hat pin. She said it's an antique and she collects those too. I told her that I was pretty shocked when she stabbed me with it and that I was bleeding where she stabbed me. I told her that this evening got off on the wrong foot, and that I had already paid the bill, and that we should try again another time, not ever. With that, she snapped out of her quiet sobbing and began yelling at me. Wait, you're leaving? You can't leave me. I said, look, the evening has taken a bad turn and I just want to go. She stood up and yelled, no one leaves me, I leave them, and started marching to the door of the restaurant, forgetting that there were 3 steps she had to walk down towards the entrance of the restaurant. She took a tumble down the stairs, purse flying, her scarf wrapped around her foot, and landed hard on the bottom step. As I stood there, I wondered if this could get any worse. And it did. She started crying and holding her ankle. Servers and the manager came running, as well as an off-duty paramedic. They started working on her there, icing and elevating her leg because she might have broken her ankle. The paramedic called for an ambulance, and within minutes it was there. They got her on a stretcher and were wheeling her out the door of PF Chang's to the ambulance. Throughout this whole scene, I never said a word. I was just an observer, hoping this was all a bad dream, and hoping that as the ambulance doors closed, I could just walk to my car unnoticed. No such luck. She started screaming for her boyfriend, the guy she had been on a date with. Everyone looked at me. I started to say, wait, hold on, I'm not her boyfriend, when I was cut off by the paramedic who said, they are taking her to Presbyterian Medical Center. Follow them. I got in my car and was taking my time, but the ambulance was waiting for me. I pulled up behind them and flashed my lights and they took off. Throughout the drive to the hospital, I considered just going home, but I did feel some responsibility to at least see this nightmare through to the end. It was a light night at the emergency room and she was getting the full treatment from everyone because she was gorgeous and dressed in an evening gown. She had x-rays which showed no broken bones, so they put her in an air cast and gave her crutches. When she was released, I was there to take her home. She wasn't going to be able to drive her car, which was still at the restaurant. We drove silently for the most part, except when she had to tell me where to turn. We eventually pulled up to her house, and I had to help her out of the car and up to her front door, where she asked me to come in. I said the evening was eventful, but I have to go. She then said, well, the evening doesn't have to be a complete disaster. Come on in, sit back on the couch and let me take care of you. I literally ran off that porch laughing hysterically until I got in my car and drove away. I deleted my account and never used Match.com again. Worst date ever.